Welcome back to Flip the Script with me, Conor O'Keefe. I am absolutely delighted to have today's guest on with me. I wanted to have a great guest on for International Women's Day, International Women's Week, really. And it took me about 3.5 seconds to think about today's guest, to have Ellen on with us today. And I just want to extend huge thank you for showing up this morning, because you were just on TV last night in Dancing with the Stars every Sunday, dancing your arse off with your partner, and you got through to the next week. And it must have been crazy hard for you to drag yourself out of bed this morning, so thank you so much.
Thank you. No, honestly, I was so thrilled when you asked me to do this, and you were just so nice about it. I was like, I can't say no.
Yeah, it's like, what can I say that'll just make it absolutely impossible?
When you brought your nieces into it, I was like, okay.
Oh, my nieces absolutely love you. No, I put up the questions and answers box yesterday, as I said to you offline, and it was like, no questions. It was just, everybody was just making statements about how much of a legend you were, and how they want you to go to your niece's birthday and all these kind of things. So when you get somebody on like that, I just think it says a lot about the person. You know what I mean? Where like no one's actually sweet. I said, you know what, I actually don't have any questions. I just want to let you know that I think she's class. But thank you so much for coming on today. Really, really appreciate it. I start the podcast the same way every single time, right? The same question, right? Okay. And I want to bring it way, 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 way back. Okay. Right? It's before swimming now. Okay. Right? Way, way back. And
so while I was in the belly.
Yeah. So basically, what was small Ellen like? What was it like? What was it, your childhood like? From birth till go through it with me.
I was a very, very just happy, hyper kid. Nothing really fazed me. I was dancing, like I was probably dancing around the place before I could even walk. I loved dancing so much. And yeah, I was just so hyper and giddy. And when I think about my childhood, I just think of being happy. And I remember like even primary school, I loved primary school. I went to Belgrove in Clontarf, and I just had such a fun time that I remember leaving in 6th class and I was bawling my eyes out because I was like, it'll never be the same. I was so sad to grow up. But I guess that's what you do. You have to grow up. And a part of my growing up was sport. And I started from a very, very young age. So like I was born without my left arm from below the elbow, and thankfully I have parents who didn't see it as an issue and didn't treat me any differently. So along with me being a super hyper kid, I just did everything that my siblings did. The only kind of difference between me and them was that I'd have to go to Kappa Hospital to get a prosthetic every couple of months, and I really didn't like prosthetic, and thankfully my parents didn't force me to have one. It was kind of just an option to see if I wanted, if it's something I wanted, if it was something that I could learn to use, and I never learned to use it, so it kind of just became more of an interference in my life than anything else. So I stopped using it, and yeah, I started swimming. I did my lessons, and then I remember when I was about 7 years old, I got asked to go to a disability competition in Northern Ireland. And it was kind of from there that I realised I love swimming. I actually hated swimming when I was doing the lessons because I was like, I hate being wet. I hate the smell of chlorine. I can't wait to never do this again. And then I started racing and I was like, oh, okay. I like this.
Yeah. It's so strange to hear a swimmer say, I hate being wet and I hate chlorine, the two things you're going to have to deal with every day.
There's a lot of swimmers out there who hate swimming. Who absolutely hate it.
Right. But I have to think now, right? You know, like for me, I remember when I started doing my swimming lessons, things like that, I was fucking terrified of the water. I don't know why. Maybe it was because it was something that it was unknown to me. Like, how did you feel your first ever lesson when you came in? Do you remember?
I can't remember my first ever lesson, but I never remember not being happy in the water. As in, like, I I was confident in the water. I was playing in the water. And yeah, no, I never remember not being good in the water. It was just more the feeling of getting it. Like everything that comes with swimming there's a lot of prep to it. You're really wet afterwards. You have to have a shower. You have to dry your hair, and that's kind of all the stuff that I hated about swimming. The swimming itself and the lessons I loved.
Okay.
But I never remember not being good, not being comfortable in the water. I remember once my swim teacher wasn't there. I think they were off sick, and someone else came in, and she had never interacted with a little kid with one arm before. So she automatically thought that I couldn't. And she made me wear what are they called?
Armbands.
An armband. Yeah, she
Okay.
made me wear an armband on my left arm. And I was so upset. And my mom lost it. She was so angry because there was no need. I didn't need it.
Yeah, it is. Like, I think that's, immediately people just kind of think about what's the safest thing here, but they never actually just go about finding out who you are as a swimmer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because obviously you were well able.
Yeah.
And so like it probably progressed quite quickly for you, I would imagine.
So quickly.
Yeah. Like it was basically into your lessons, but you're basically learning how to swim, and then within a very, very short period of time, you're competing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were up at 7 years of age. You were competing in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And it was only 6 years until you were a Paralympian.
Yeah.
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 So like, how was that process like for you? Like, as a young person, did you have to give up a lot of your kind of, I suppose, was there a lot of, let's say, early mornings before school? Was there a lot of times where you have to, kind of give up on the things that normal, 9, 10, 11-year-old people
Yeah, but at the same time, I think swimming in Ireland, the community for kids is really, really good. So even though I started off doing like 1 session a week, 2 sessions a week, 3, 4, 5, 6, then it's before school, it's after school. So I think my most at one time, I think, was 11. I think I was doing 11 pool sessions a week. But like, I had friends, like it was all my friends I was doing it with. I was in a club. I had really, really good friends. And that's the thing about sport, is that you get so close to these people, and these people, you go, like, training isn't fun. It is in a way, because there's the satisfaction to it. But like, you have to kind of get over the hardness of what you're doing, and then kind of, like, yourself, when you think about like what your session is ahead of you, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. But then you get into it, and you get into that mindset. But the people you're doing it with, like, they're like normal people or people you go to school with. They don't understand. So it bonds you to those people for the rest of your life. Like, I mightn't see some of my friends I used to swim with for years. And like, as soon as I see them, it'll be like nothing has ever changed. And even like when I came back from Tokyo, there's 2 girls that I would have done my swimming with when I was a lot younger. And like, now we're seeing each other nearly every day, and it's really, really lovely. But yeah, like you do, I was doing dancing. I, like, when I say dancing, not ballroom. I'm not cheating in this competition. No, I was doing hip hop, and I also did speech and drama, and I did GAA for a while there as well. And it was just one by one, things had to stop. So I think I dropped GAA first, then I dropped speech and drama, and then it got to the point where I had to drop hip hop as well. And like, I loved hip hop, I loved dancing. So now to come back full circle and be dancing again is really, really nice. But I loved racing so much, and there's just that satisfaction you get when you do realize you're getting better, and you do go out and compete, and you see your times drop. That is so satisfying, and it's nearly becomes an addiction, but it's like a healthy addiction. And and you're learning all these skills, and there's also that satisfaction as well of going into school after a training session and knowing that people have just woken up maybe 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and you've been awake since 4:20. And you've already done you've already nearly done a day's work before you go into school. So that was satisfying as well.
Savage. it's very, very strange, right? Because you're crossing points with my father. My father made a point about when he joined the army. Right, he joined the army. He was 17, and he had just turned 17. He was living in rural Waterford, and he was working in a sawmills that was next to my grandparents' house, and he just didn't like it. And he said all he ever wanted to do was be a soldier, so he left. And he said within a month of meeting the recruits that he had signed up with, he was willing to take a bullet for them. You know what I mean? Within a month of knowing them. So there is that. And I talked about my time in Thai boxing as well, where you're all training together, you're all fighting together, you're all cutting weight together. It's like a shared experience, isn't it? Like that, the people that are getting into the pool with you in the mornings at 4:20, and they're doing their training sessions, and they're out the gap and all, and they're ready to go at 7:30 back in to go to do a day of school. The other people in school don't know about that, but those people do, and it's that shared experience that bonds us. It's like you hear about sometimes hostages, when they're taking hostages, that there's a group of hostages that might spend weeks together, and they have an inseparable almost bond afterwards, because they've been through this experience that maybe no one really understands. I might be able to understand as a sports person, getting up early in the morning, smashing out sessions when you're really tired and you don't want to do them, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But like we can have a conversation and we can kind of relate to it, but like
it's not exactly the same. You know what I mean. You and I think that's those shared experiences are they definitely do something to us as well. They mold us in certain ways. So like there is, do you think that it gave you a bit more confidence as a young person, that you're like, I'm able to get up, at 4:20 in the morning, hop into the pool, get my session done, go to full day of school, finish up, probably hit the pool again, in
the evening,
Do you know what I mean? Like, did you think that it gave you some sort of an element to like, I can do whatever I want?
Yes and no. I think it did make me fairly confident in feeling like anything that I wanted to do, I could kind of do it as long as I worked hard at it. But it also, I guess, because I had such big experiences from such a young age. So I started doing the competitions like 7, but I represented Ireland for the first time when I was 9. I made the senior team, I think, when I was 11. When I was 12, I qualified for Beijing, and then when I was 12, because I had the qualifying times for Beijing, I went on a familiarization camp with my team without any parents when I was 12 to China.
Wow.
for 10 days. And I had all these mad experiences from such a young age that I found it quite hard to relate to school and to relate to people around me, and like teachers asking me like, what do I want to be when I grow up, or like why. Even like working hard in school, I found it really, really hard because I couldn't see the end goal. Because I was like, I don't know, like I'm going to swim. This is what I'm going to do. Like, I don't need to worry about this. I'm going to swim. I found it so hard to just relate and to kind of make a goal with school, because I didn't, like, I'd be like, oh yeah, I want to do this, but I wouldn't be passionate about it. The only thing I was passionate about was I wanted to go into media, and I wanted to do communications in DCU. So that was like first thing on my CAO. But I was absolutely awful at English. Like, English in the Leaving Cert is not in any way the English that we use today. It's not the English that we use in media. It's not the English you read in papers, you see on the internet. Like, you being able to take apart a poem written hundreds of years ago isn't, like, I just couldn't do it. So I didn't get the grade, so I didn't get what I wanted to do. So yeah, I found it hard to relate to people around me. And I think I also felt a lot more like an adult. So in another way, at times I'd get frustrated with swimming because I felt like, not that like my childhood was kind of robbed from me, but I just didn't have the same experiences as everyone else. And at times I would get very frustrated and I would get very upset. And even like when I was a teenager, like my friends around me going to get jobs in restaurants or in shops, I couldn't do that. I was swimming. swimming was my job. And then people I wanted to be friends with not understanding that I couldn't go to things because I was swimming, and comments like, oh, it's just swimming, would you not miss it? And like, you can't. You have to show up. It's discipline. It's what's going to get you to the end goal. So I did struggle. My teenage years being an athlete are probably the hardest, because you want to swim and you want to do your sport, but you're also tempted by all of these other things, and you can get angry and frustrated and blame your sport for it. But coming out the other end in my 20s, I'm so glad I stayed at it. I'm so glad I stuck at it. I'm healthier than the kind of the people I went to school with. I have all these healthy habits. When you just take apart, like, not even the achievements I've had from sport, but just as a person, I understand my body. I understand food. I understand the importance of sleep. Like, I mightn't practice it all the time, because when I'm not swimming, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go wild and stay up late. I'm gonna eat a McDonald's. But I get such joy out of those things, because like, I know realistically they're not sustainable, so I'm just going to enjoy them while I can. So that's like when I'm doing the dancing now, like, I still am swimming on the side, but I'm like, woo, I'm going to enjoy this as much as I can, because when I'm finished with the dancing and I go back swimming, I know
the sledgehammer is going to come down. Yeah. No, I think that's so interesting. That the teenage years were the years where, because that's when you're really trying to find your footing. You're leaving childhood and you're starting to creep towards adulthood, and there's so many different things that enter our lives at that time, isn't it? It's like, boyfriends and girlfriends, there's holidays with friends, there's, alcohol comes in there as well, like later down the line.
Like, I've never been on a holiday with my friends.
Yeah.
Like those like 6-year holidays, or even because I didn't do transition year, I went to boarding school in England for 2 years to swim. So even transition year with like my school friends, I didn't get. So I didn't. Because I think transition year in school as well is a really important time to build that kind of bond with the people around you, and so I didn't have that. So I wouldn't be friends with anyone I was kind of in secondary school with.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, because you think like I think after our junior cert, like the year really starts to get a bit solidified, and you start to get a bit older too. So it's not like a dog eat dog thing where, like, well, I don't know what it was like for you, but when I was in an all boys school, like, it was just people just communicated through insulting each other all the time.
Oh, really?
And like, the more personal you can get, the better, like, And I think when we hit fourth year, our year just got friendlier. Our year just got more sound, And I think it's like I can really, as I was just saying there now to you about the relating things, I can really relate to what you were saying about that when I was in Thai boxing, because Thai boxing is a weight. It's done by weight classes, so I couldn't eat shitty food. I couldn't stay up late because I'd be up early in the morning to train before work. And I didn't go on a 6-year holiday. I didn't go to college balls. I didn't go out for normal college nights out. And the odd time I did, I was like, "This is fucking amazing!" And just get absolutely let loose, like, But it's all with this thing of, Jesus, I better make use of this now, because like, I've got a fight in 10 weeks. I have to start training or whatever. So it's always constantly in the back of your mind. But maybe I've had I've had positives and negatives come out of that. So some of the positives of that is I am incredibly disciplined, and I will do training sessions when I don't really want to, not like just milling training sessions for the sake of it, but like, those mornings you don't want to get out of bed. The duvet feels like it's about 40 kilos on top of you and you just don't want to get out. We'll get out, both of us will, but it's the negative side of it for me was like, I think it really, I don't know if this happened to you at all, but it gave me a very negative relationship with food. And I think that was more so because it was weight orientated. But
yeah, I have like, because with sport, it wasn't like I don't have a negative well, like when I talk about food, my boyfriend's literally like, "You have such a weird relationship with food."
Really?
because I think so much about all of the little things. Because when it comes to sport, and when it comes to high performance sport and elite sport like the Olympics or the Paralympics, like those medals are won off percentage, like literally 0.01 of a second, like.
Yeah.
And always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what is in my control? What is in my control to give me that advantage? So I will stress and panic if there is too much of a gap between when I've eaten and when I've trained. So that would kind of where my relationship will. If someone looking into my life would be like, that's not a healthy relationship with food. But it's more just like, I'm aware that my competitor is probably eating right now and getting the gains, and I'm not. So that's kind of where the stress with food and me would come in. Whereas like, I wouldn't really like, I'd be like, oh, there's a donut, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think too much about that. It's more like the timing of my food.
Right.
And I'll know, because I know my body so well, I'll know I need to eat. Because so many people say to me, oh, you must like, how many calories a day do you eat? But you can't really track that with swimming too much, because the technology isn't 100% accurate in water. So you can't really know like how many calories you're burning, and it's just harder to track. So I've gotten so good at like listening to my body and knowing I need to eat, I need to, or whatever. And I can make those healthy decisions. But when I'm craving something, like I'll go ahead and eat it. Like
Yeah. Like I think that's the timing and stuff. It's a very business orientated approach to food, isn't it? Like I think I have the same approach with food as well. It's like when I'm looking at like eggs on toast, and there's protein there and carbohydrates in the toast, and there's fat in the butter, and you know,
and
I'm
you're literally like, I need a bit of greenery. Where's the avocado?
Do you know, yeah, exactly. No, it is so true. You've got a real fighter's mindset, actually, Ellen, because like Muhammad Ali's said like famously like that he hated every single minute of training, right? But he said like it was just all worth it to be the best in the world, like to be the greatest at what he does. Like he would train every single day, for as long as it was needed for him to be at where he was. And also what you said there about like my competitor is doing this thing. That's a very much like Mike Tyson, right? He used to get up at 4 a.m., right? He didn't have to get up at 4 a.m. He could have got up at 8 a.m. But he always used to get up at 4 a.m. and run like 5 or 6 miles, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason why he used to get up at 4 a.m. was because he knew if he was fighting somebody who was in the States, they'd probably be asleep.
Oh yeah.
So it was a mental edge for him where he was like, oh yeah, you're just you sleep on there. I'm gonna get up at 4 o'clock and I'm gonna go running around the place.
That was the thing about Tokyo. So obviously Tokyo is a different time zone. So, and like in the pandemic with COVID and stuff, it was like and like flights were getting cancelled left, right and centre. So we didn't fully know when we were actually going to Tokyo. So what my coach did is we had a training camp in Fuerteventura 2 weeks before we were due to fly to Tokyo. Originally we were supposed to actually be in Tokyo, maybe like go to Fuerteventura for a week and then be in Tokyo. So when we were in Fuerteventura, we all started to adjust our body clocks there, and we had to wear like these ridiculous sunglasses at like 6 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the day to try and get our eyes used to the darkness. And we'd put like black sacks up in our apartments and literally like try and make it as dark as possible so that your eyes would think it's nighttime and you get really, really sleepy. So I was literally like conked out at like 8 o'clock thinking it was like 12 o'clock. And it was just adjusting your body clock to Japan time as soon as possible. But that gave me so much confidence. Yeah. I could feel like, and that's the thing when it comes down to high performance sport as well. It is a mental game. Everyone is physically as prepared as you. It's who is confident enough that they've done absolutely everything that they can. So as I'm getting older, like I'm having so much fun with Dance with the Stars, and I'm allowing myself to enjoy it because I know I'm capable of switching back into that frame of mind and that mindset that I need to go into. But I won't be able to do that if I haven't had time off. So
Mm.
I'm not having time off, but I'm kind of having time off from the intensity of it.
The
And
rigorousness.
I have to do this, because if I don't, I won't be able to do the intensity of controlling all the controllables in the lead up to Paris 100% if I don't do this now.
Yeah. It's like, it's incredible the small adjustments that you make that make a huge difference, because it may not actually make a terrible difference in terms of the physical, but as you said there, like, just knowing that you had done that gave you that mental switch that kind of said, right, okay, I'm literally doing everything here. There's nothing more that I can actually do. I'm so well prepared that there's absolutely no other outcome possible that I'm going to come out here and I'm going to swim my fastest time.
Yeah.
Really, in your mind, you know? And
and I've never felt that before at a games as well before.
Really?
Yeah, because I've always been so concerned with the outcome rather than the process. And when you switch your mentality to the process and what have you done, and have you done everything you possibly can do, that's when you win the medals and that's when you get the performance. Whereas in the past, every single games I've had before, Beijing was a write-off because it was my first games and it was like, oh, isn't this amazing? And I was a kid, I was a child.
Yeah.
And then I was 17 in 2012, and because I kind of got into Beijing off talent, I thought I didn't have to work hard.
Right.
So in London, didn't perform as I should. I was like a grumpy little teenager. And then with Rio, I was very aware it was my third games. I was started to panic about, like, how can I call myself an athlete if I haven't won a medal and it's my third games? And then that's when the whole negative mindset came in, focusing on the outcome rather than the performance. And then between Rio and Tokyo, I knew I had to work on my mental health and my mindset a lot more. And I was going through those processes. But even in 2020, I was nearly glad of the pandemic because it gave me a moment to stop, because I'd been on that hamster wheel since I was 13. Like, I hadn't stopped. And I needed a moment to stop and reflect and really get my bearings. And it was really in that extra year that I had that I understood controlling the controllables, because everything had been taken away from me, but there were still things I could do. And that's what I learned. There's always something that you can do to put yourself in the position that you need to be in. So that's really what I'm doing going forward now.
Are you hard on yourself? Do you think that you are hard on yourself? Do you, like, because you were saying there about this is my third games, but you were still very young as well. Do you think that you have a high bar for yourself?
I do have a high bar for myself, but I also I was young. I think now it's more of an internal thing, whereas like I want to do well for myself. And when you're younger, you're like, I want to do well because it's expected of me, or
I'm
what
not
will
an
people
athlete
think?
if I don't win a medal.
Yeah,
kind of
and all
attitude.
these people and what they've done. And whereas now I'm like I have my gold medal. I could retire if I wanted to, but I know what I want to do, and I know there's a time that I want to swim, and I want to do that for myself. I don't want to do that for anyone else. So that nearly is more motivating than anything else, is knowing that it's just for you.
Mm-hmm. This I talk about this often, that very elusive victory within ourselves. You know, it's like I feel like this is. I'm definitely going to come back to this about our processes and journeys throughout our careers, because I just want to take a step back, right? Because I think we've jumped straight into Tokyo.
We're going
here.
all over the place.
We're going straight into Tokyo, but I just really wanted to kind of jump back a small bit, because so you were 13 at your first games, right? Like, that's do you feel like, did you put a lot of pressure on yourself, or did you feel like you were, you know, I'm young, I'm going to use this to learn? Were you in that mindset at 13? Like, what, you know?
Oh,
what
I
way did you
was
think
there
about it?
to have fun, have an experience. I had the best time ever in Beijing, because I was a kid. I was having fun and everything was so new, and I think Beijing was probably my favorite games. I always get asked that, and I don't really know how to answer it because each games is special in its own way. But I think because it was my first one, it will always be nearly my favorite one. But I also say that I should never have gone because I was 13. I was a baby. I hadn't been to a world championships. I hadn't been to a European championships. That was my first ever major. So if I had been to a major before and had like a lead up, but I didn't. I had like galas, Leinsters, nationals, Paralympic games. Like that's a lot. And I didn't realize how big it was until I came home and I had to go back to galas. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't motivate myself. I didn't. And I struggled a lot between Beijing and London, and because as I said, I went to Beijing off talent. And I don't think any athlete should feel they've gotten there just off talent.
They should have a record, or
they should have the evidence behind them of the hours they've trained, and like I knew I'd done a lot of training, but it was just talent, and I didn't understand hard work. So when I had to work hard, I'd always be complaining between Beijing and London, and I wouldn't. I would try and work hard, but I didn't understand it. I didn't grasp it. And I didn't also understand the importance of sleep and nutrition and controlling the controllables, as I said. So I was just so angry nearly in London because I didn't understand, like, I should be better. Why amn't I better? And I didn't blame anyone else. I blamed myself because it wasn't anyone else's fault. Because at the end of the day, it was up to me and I had to commit and I wasn't fully committed. So I think that's why I can be quite hard on myself, because I know deep down, have I committed fully? Have I? And I'm not afraid of being honest with myself. So it's nearly easier coming home from a games when you've done bad because it gives you that fire. It sparks the fire inside you. So coming home from Beijing was hard because I was like a kid. And then London, it was like, all right, come on, let's do this. And I was really, really good. Even like the lead up, the year of Rio, I was in a great shape, and I was in great shape and I was in a great mindset. But then it was like, as soon as it got to the date of January 2016, I was like, that was when the panic set in. And then I came home from Rio and I won my medal, but I was still like, I can be better. Like, I can be better. How do I be better? But actually coming home from Tokyo, I think coming home from Tokyo is the hardest one.
Really? Because so just for everybody here now that might be listening to Ellen, might have come across Ellen for the first time on the podcast, you went to Beijing in 2008 as 13-year-old girl, and that was your first games. Your second games, you were 17?
17, yeah.
You're 17, and that was London in 2012. And you just came shy of getting into kind of medal contention, or do you think that you were close? Or
No, I was just about made finals. Yeah.
Off the pace a bit.
Yeah.
Then you got into the finals in Rio and came away with a bronze medal.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know, this is what I really want to get into, right? Is society would have us believe that your biggest success was Tokyo.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the question I'm posing, or I suppose as devil's advocate, right? Because I feel as though success, for me anyway, now, because I've measured success so externally all the time, wanted to win titles and win fights and win races and stuff, that my success should always be mine.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you feel about that now? You know, like you're saying there, you're going towards Paris in a different mindset now. Does that mean that you're coming into Paris, obviously as well prepared as you possibly can, giving everything, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's? Do you feel like there's almost a relief of pressure because you realize that no matter what actually happens, you feel like you're a success? Or do you feel like it's kind of a, right, we have to go one further, we have to go better?
Yeah. So when I won my medal in Rio, my feelings, how I felt was relief. That's all I felt was absolute relief. But my reaction was I looked delighted. I was hugging people. The photos, there's so many great photos. It was great. Like, it was a great photo op opportunity. That's what I gave the people. And then when I won my gold medal, all I felt was peace. And I felt happy. And that's why when I finished, I didn't react, because I was happy inside. I didn't feel the need to be extravagant, to hide it, to do it for other people. I didn't feel the need to slap the water and kind of get the photo op. And even afterwards, one of my teammates was like, I'm so annoyed you didn't sit on the rope and cheer. And I just didn't understand, like, if people are really, really that happy, I just, maybe it's just how I show my contentness is just more of an internal thing. And when I'm not that content, that's when it's a bit extravagant. Like, I didn't understand, like, I'm so happy. I don't feel the need to do that. So I do think my biggest success was Tokyo, but not because of the medal. It was more because I had ticked all the boxes. And that's the most important thing for me when I go to a race, is to show up as the best version of myself that I can and not think about anyone else. And even because you go into a call room before you race, and even in the call room before we raced, I was just so calm. And then I have a playlist on of like Eminem or like just loads of motivational music. But then like the playlist ended and a Katy Perry song just started playing, and it was a Katy Perry. The song's called Unconditionally, and it's just about, I don't know, she's singing about someone and loving them unconditionally. But when I was listening to it, I was like saying it to myself, and it was more like, no matter what happens, I'll love you unconditionally. And that's like, to me, it didn't matter what happened. It didn't matter if I won gold, silver, bronze, came last, as long as I swam to my best abilities and I had gotten a PB. That was my main goal, getting a PB. Then I'd be happy, and I was.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so at peace, because it was nearly like I'd stepped into the person I'd always wanted to become. So actually, when I came home from Tokyo, like a lot of people get into sport, as you said, for the titles and the victory and the glory. I struggled with that when I came home, because of all of the attention. I didn't know what to do with it. And I appreciated it. And I appreciate people telling me how proud they are of me all the time, or their kids looking up to me. Like, it's a lovely feeling. But I don't know what to do with it, because I didn't win that medal for that victory or glory. I won it for myself. So I really struggled when I came home.
Yeah, that's it's very interesting, right? Because I remember I was telling you about Paddy, the guy that I had on the podcast for the second episode. He knocked me unconscious in an Irish title fight, right? In the final of an Irish title fight. And he says to me, he goes, look over when the fight was stopped. Look at me. And he was so calm. He wasn't like throwing his hands up in the air. He wasn't jumping on the ropes, because he was like, I know that I'm after preparing myself. It's not a shock to me to do well, you know? And maybe there was like an element of that to you in Tokyo. It's like, I've done everything. Yeah. I've left it all in there. And it's so strange how, like, you know, sports, drawing parallels, like, you know, you're waiting in the dressing room before you're announced to walk to the ring in fighting, and you're in this in the kind of the call room, and you're waiting to go out. And it's so strange, isn't it, how years and months of early mornings and gym sessions and all that, they come down to minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Minutes, literal minutes. And it's so mad as well for those of you that might be not as familiar with Ellen. You did a 2-second PB, which is like incredible numbers, isn't it? Like, you know, 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, it's usually you're talking about point, you know, 2 or 3 of a second, like, or whatever.
And I'd been stuck. So it was actually 3. I had been stuck on I say it was 3. It was like 2.3 2.7 or 2 point something.
Well, nearly 3.
Nearly 3, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was stuck on swimming 122s for like 10 years. And that's why I was like, it's a mental thing. It's not a physical thing. Physically, I'm fab. But I just need
Physically, I'm fucking great.
And I knew it.
It's the clocks
it's
are
the
wrong.
clocks. It's the clocks. No, it was my head. So it was conquering my head and conquering my mindset. That's
Okay.
what it was.
To believe that you could do a sub 120?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, I had so many people believing in me, and I was like, why can't I believe in myself? And that's why when the pandemic happened and everything stopped, I was just with myself.
Right.
And sometimes that's just what you need. You just need, like, we distract ourselves so much with phones, technology, socializing, being busy. We distract ourselves so much, and
we can distract ourselves with what we do, with swimming.
Yeah.
You could distract yourself from what is actually the real point or purpose.
Yeah. And sometimes you just need to be with yourself, and you do so much learning when you do that, when you're with yourself.
Yeah.
And you're forced to be with yourself.
Yeah.
So even in Tokyo as well, like, I learned that my biggest distraction is probably my phone. So an hour before I went to bed every night, I'd turn it off and I would just be by myself, and I knew I'd be able to fall asleep. I knew I wouldn't have any distractions. I deleted all of my all of my social media when I was out there because I didn't want distractions. I didn't want outside influences. And
Right.
we allow ourselves to have outside influences all the time, and we kind of forget who our true selves are, because we're too busy being influenced by the things we see online.
Absolutely. And even if we don't believe that we are, the science will tell us that we are.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's really, really, that's a very important message of not seeking distraction, because I've often sought distraction when I failed at stuff. You know, when I failed at things, like if I lost a fight, I'd immediately be thinking, I'd be on to my coach 2 days later, get me a fight there, will you get me a fight? Because I want something to train for, because I want this redemption, this personal redemption from within myself, and did you ever feel like that you had something like that along your road of swimming, that you just wanted, that you felt like you had let yourself down, or that you felt like, I want to jump back into it?
Yeah, after competitions, I'd be exactly the same if I didn't do well. But it's also at competitions as well. You get the taste, you get excited, you get because you could go ages without a competition, and then you just get addicted to it and you want more and more and more. And that's why when you come home from a games as well, and a big competition, something big, like, you need to rest. Like, that's why it's so hard coming home from a games. Like, every athlete will struggle when they come home from a games.
Really?
Even no matter if you're successful or not, because you nearly have to mourn the dream of Tokyo. Because even if you go to a next games, it's still over. It's done. And that's why, like, I did 2 events in Tokyo. I did the 100 breaststroke, which I won the gold in, and then I did the 200 medley, which I finaled in. And when I finished my final of my 2IM, a staff member was like, "Oh my God, your games is over. Well done." And all I felt in that moment, I was delighted with my race. I was so happy walking out, and all I felt in that moment was sadness. I was so sad. I just felt the sinking, and I was like, "Oh, it's over."
Yeah. Back to day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it is strange.
you
isn't
come
it?
home and people don't understand that you're sad. They're like, "Why are you sad?" And you're like, "It's over."
Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange one, because it's because as well, I think it's probably been such a big deal for you for such a long time that, like, now you're like, Jesus, what the fuck else is there? Like, you know what I mean? I think this is very similar to athletes that retire, and even anybody that retires from anything, like, it's like my father said when he retired from the army, he lost his identity.
Yeah.
He lost who the fuck he was. And like, same with me with Thai boxing and things like that. This is I'm leading up to another tough question here.
Ooh.
But basically, Roy Keane and Donnacha O'Callaghan and all that, they've spoken about leaving their sports, especially Donnacha O'Callaghan, who's now on he's a great
He's
man.
so funny.
Isn't he such a
I actually was on the show before Tokyo, so it's he's on with Duran and
Carl?
Carl.
Yes.
There we go. She's that's my worst thing, my worst quality. Names. Even if I know someone, I could know someone my whole life, and I'll look at them and I'll be like, brain freeze. What is their name?
Hello there, buddy.
I've literally forgotten my cousin's names before, and I'm like, oh my god.
Well, you didn't forget Donica's anyway.
I know, yeah. But I was on the show and we just had chat, and then afterwards he texted me. He just got my number and texted me just to say good luck. Like, he's such a lovely guy.
He's such a nice dude, and like he was very open about his mental health struggles with leaving rugby. You know, now in fairness to the man, he's like a phoenix. He has risen from the ashes. He's doing Ireland's Fittest Family. He's on RT. He's on 2FM radio. He is absolutely. I think like he was always known because he actually went to the same secondary school as I went to, and he was always known as this like larger than life, bubbly character and things like that. So I think he found his kind of niche with that. But he talked about struggling with leaving that. You know, right? This is my question, right?
Okay.
You had your first Paralympic Games at 13, right? You're 4 down the line now. And your next one is Paris, right? 2024. Maybe you'll get another one down the line in 2028 and go on and on and on. But do you see life, like do you see a life without swimming?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'd always thought that Tokyo would have been my last one. But because I felt that I had nearly conquered what it is to compete and what it is to be an athlete and be a happy athlete and be content and not have all that pressure. I decided I wanted to go to Paris, so I know Paris will be my last. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because like if my agent is listening to this, she'll be like, you can't say that because it's like, what about your sponsors? You can't just because you always have to think about the business side of things. But like that's why I'm excited for Paris, because I know it will be my last. I know I'm enjoying Dancing with the Stars because I know when I go back, I have to give it my all, and I'm excited to give it my all. Mm-hmm. And I think the important thing that we're all kind of starting to talk about when it comes to mental health and struggles, and like those sports people like Donica admitting the struggles and the problems we face with mental health. It's normal. It's natural. And I think the more I think people who retire and don't acknowledge that it's hard to retire are lying to themselves. And they're the ones who are going to struggle in the long haul, and they're probably going to feel even more alone than ever. But it's allowing yourself to feel that pain. And I know it will come, and I know I'll be sad. And I think it's in those moments that you learn what you want and what you need and who you're going to be. And you have to feel that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that's a real point in time when you don't want to be seeking distraction.
Yeah,
isn't it? Really, you want to kind of be there.
Yeah.
And
I think it's an important message for kids as well. Is that like they see their sporting idols on TV or on the radio, and they have all these ideas in their head of who they're going to be, but it's also really, really important for them to know that it's not always easy, and that it's normal to feel sad, and it's normal to feel frustrated and alone, and like we feel that. We do. All of us feel that. It comes with with life. It comes with being a human being.
Yeah, 100%. It's a mystery of life here, this meaningless existence that we all have, right? It's like in the grand scheme of things, and then there's the mystery of why do we care about it so much? But we do care about our lives, like, you know, and I think the more you care about something within your life, the more it does open you up to that heartache as well, doesn't it? You know, like I definitely felt that with sport, especially with Thai boxing. I think I learned a big lesson from that in ultramarathon running. I think I could definitely stop ultramarathon running right now and be completely okay with it, you know, and because I could do something else, you know. I feel like that's I wouldn't have been in that place before, you know. But like Ellen, like you've been doing this now, like at a very high level for 13 years, right? And you've even before that, you were competing at national level and things like that. Like, you know, do you ever get thoughts of that, or is you're like very much you're still in just the day to day of being an athlete?
Well, doing the dancing and not actually being the day-to-day athlete that I once was makes me miss it so much. So I'm so excited I did this because I'm so excited to go back to being the day-to-day athlete. But I know, like I know I want to see what else I can do. And I know that if I don't step away from it after Paris, I could go back to being angry and frustrated and miss out on opportunities and I always think like, who am I other than a swimmer? Like, what else can I do? And it's important for me to find that out, and that's why it's important for me to also do this show, because I'm completely stepping out of my comfort zone with the dancing. I'm making friends who aren't sports people. I think when you're a sports person as well, it can be very hard to interact with other non-sports people because you don't know what else to talk about, and you don't know who you are other than being a swimmer. So it's important to do other things and try new things, and I've made peace with that. I don't exactly know what I'm going to do after swimming, but I know I won't be competing.
Well, I think I think it's important to kind of realize that you don't really need to know what you're going to do after swimming because you're swimming right now. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I think and even for the competitive edge to kind of say, I'm a fucking swimmer now and I don't have to think about that just yet. But like what I would say to everybody that comes on here and they're saying, about labeling themselves and all this kind of stuff is you're Ellen, like, you know what I mean? And you're not getting like posts from all of these people and messages from all of these people and people's nieces and nephews and all this kind of stuff wanting you to be at their birthday parties because you swim fast. You know what I'm saying? It's a far more encompassing thing than that. It's the person you are, and I think that's what we do forget is that it's the person. It's not what we can do or what we can achieve or where we can go with things. It's who we are. If we're kind, if we hold ourselves with integrity, if we treat ourselves properly and treat other people properly, it doesn't really matter where we come in a race or where we, what we do or, how much, things we can do for other people. It's about ourselves, So like, do you think that since, throughout your kind of journey with swimming that it has created a better relationship with yourself?
100%. And each games I feel like I'm nearly evolving into a new person. So I'm excited to see who I am post Paris. And also with sport and with the kind of profile that I've been given, like I do take it very seriously, recognizing that I have a privilege that other people with disabilities don't have. I have a voice that other people with disabilities don't have, and I try and use it as much as I can. And I know I'm going to try and do that after Paris, whatever that may be, because we just don't have a voice.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you think the population of people with disabilities don't have a voice?
Oh, when a building is being prioritized over a human being, that's when you realize people with disabilities they don't have a voice.
And what way? Expand on that for me, because
there's probably so I put up a post for International Day of People with Disabilities asking like, what would you like to see change? And one of the most basic things is knowing whether or not a building is accessible.
Right.
So imagine you're going out with your friends on a night out and you're in a wheelchair. A lot of people have to call in advance to find out if they can get into the building. And that's an embarrassing conversation to have.
Yeah.
And then to be told no. And also, oh yes, you can come in, but there's no toilet. You can't use our toilets. You can't fit into our toilets. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's awful. That's outrageous. And it's an education thing as well. Like, you don't want to shame the person who owns the building because they mightn't have any education behind them about disabilities. But that's why visibility is so important, because if you out of sight, out of mind, you don't even think about it because it's not in your circle. It's not in your, like, I don't blame them, but that's why I'm like, my body needs to be on the screen because people need to realize disabilities are here. We're not like, we do exist, can happen to absolutely anyone at any point in their life. And I don't know why. I think that's why people are nearly not ignorant to it, but they're afraid of disabilities because they don't want to acknowledge how it could happen to them, how possible it is to happen to them. And it's not the end of the world if it does happen.
Yeah.
We all live pretty good lives. Get to skip the queue in Disneyland, like, it's grand.
Like,
you and all those able-bodied people standing there.
Yeah, standing there. Oh, fuck's sake. Look at them skipping us all.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like, it's a discussion that, like, you know, myself, when I'm talking to anybody that I don't really know about firsthand, so I'm an able-bodied person, like, you know, so I you know, so it must be incredibly frustrating, like, you know what I mean?
And I am mobile, like, and that's why I can get quite frustrated when I am asked certain questions about disabilities and stuff like that, because I'm like, I have one type of disability. My biggest issue is when those disabled doors are out of order because they become twice as heavy and I might be carrying a hot drink and then I spill it all over myself. Like, that's probably my biggest problem in life. Whereas people in wheelchairs can't open that door.
Yeah.
And I don't know 100% what their experience is because I'm not in a chair, but just from having friends in chairs, it's so degrading.
Yeah.
And even one of my friends was saying that he went to a doctor's surgery and it wasn't accessible. He had to go around the back where the bins were. Like,
Yeah. A lot of things have to change in that regard, don't they? Like, you know,
decency, human decency.
As you said there, that the visibility of it all is the big thing, because I think that we're kind of talking about here is bridging the gap between people with disabilities and people that don't have disabilities, and the knowledge between the two. Because for me, this is actually very, very interesting here. Actually, Mel, my girlfriend, she ran a program with Patagonia where it was very, very interesting here. Actually, right? I was actually, you know, I was very, very. I've
Spit it out.
I've got great admiration and great respect for Mel already, but with this was just amazing. It was because she realized that she had to change her mind. She had to change her whole mindset on things. Was when Patagonia approached her and said, "Look, we want to get women from different backgrounds that don't have access to the outdoors, like, you know, able-bodied white people. Can you put something together for us?" She was like, "Yeah, we'll go on a forest trek and blah, blah, blah," and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And then they realized, okay, right, we've got two people in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Right? Two people actually have to have carers with them at all times. So, okay, that's that out. There was actually there was one walk that was down as wheelchair accessible that I do all the time. It's Devil's Glen. It's not wheelchair accessible whatsoever. It's hard enough for me to get onto the path and walk around. It's down as wheelchair accessible. But so she had to really kind of actually get into the shoes, get into you know, who these people, what the challenges that they're facing are. And they ended up going to the Phoenix Park, right, to do this. But there's one disabled toilet in the whole. This is the largest outdoor park in Europe. And it has one disabled toilet.
I didn't even know that. I knew. Oh God.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things that Mel, she actually got quite upset about over. Just kind of, I suppose it's it's this thing of
people.
From us,
it's you get upset about it because you're good people and it's not your fault.
And you don't know it.
Yeah.
You feel helpless as well. Do you know? You feel like, fuck it, this is actually just, you know, it's awful for somebody to have to kind of go, right, well, we actually have to leave, or, you know, or whatever, because of this. And it's just, it was just a huge eye opener for me. The challenges that I think it's something that that we are kind of getting more to know, is that like the things that I just really take for granted, like getting up in the morning and like walking down and making a cup of coffee for myself, it's like having that freedom to do that is fantastic. Or getting in and washing myself, or these kind of things that you just don't think about.
The thing is, though, is that when it comes to disabilities, there's a solution to a lot of our problems. Just the solutions aren't being implemented. They're not
Absolutely.
being, the cheaper option is always chosen, or the one that takes up less space is always chosen,
Yeah.
which is awful.
Yeah. It's like I didn't even expect to have this discussion with you today, but it was like it is something that I think does need more coverage on it. You know what I
More
mean?
coverage, more communication on it. And it's more about looking around and seeing who's at the table and who isn't at the table. And who isn't at the table could be race, gender, sexuality, disability. Disabilities, when people talk about inclusion and diversity and talk about all those other kind of groups of people, but disability is always excluded.
Yeah, it's so strange. 'Cause
Or when they say disability, it's a wheelchair user.
Yeah. When there's many forms.
Many
like,
forms.
You know what I mean?
It's
So
a spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is strange, and that's the thing. It's like I do think that minorities of other as you were saying there, minorities on the spectrum of minorities, whether it's sexuality or color or race or whatever, that's what that's the default, isn't it? We think about those people first, and not so much people that have disabilities.
Yeah.
And where it's because people with disabilities don't have the same access to the outdoors and things like that I have, and things that just taking my own life into account. They don't have the same access to going to the gym as I do as well, because like I even know gyms that I've been in, and sure you're walking up and down the stairs all the time, and
but even in gyms themselves, like there are benches that are wider, are designed for wheelchair users. And there's none of those benches in commercial gyms.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's not like a thing where you go, oh yeah, you could just make a gym for people that are wheelchair users. But then you're like, okay, do you want someone traveling 100 miles or 100 kilometers or whatever to use this one specific gym?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's I think you're right, Ellen. I think like, well, if there's more, and I know that you have, if you're not in a wheelchair, like, you know what I mean, but it's you are in a position where you actually have a voice and can actually get it out there, like, and it's brilliant,
Like, I'd love to just be the athlete doing Dancing with the Stars, and I'm enjoying it like that, but I have to acknowledge the privileged position I'm in. And I've had even on set, there's so many people working there who've come up to me and who've just been like, you don't even realize what you're doing by being here and being that visible. And that's why I love that kids look up to me, because they don't see my arm, they don't see my disability, but they will instantly think, oh, how can I help? Rather than, oh, you can't do that. Like, kids are the best. They're class. And even like my boyfriend's niece, she would never have asked me anything about my arm until we were in a situation maybe where I couldn't do something or something, and she'd ask. But they're just so willing to learn, and they're so accepting. And that's why it's so important to get those different body shapes and types and abilities out there, because kids will just absorb it like sponges and find the solutions without even realizing what they're doing.
Yeah. I think that you're just the way you're saying there about the different minorities and inclusion and visibility. Like I often see black or Asian and white models and things like that for clothing, apparel, and all that kind of stuff. And it is probably in that thing where you're like, right, people with disabilities are kind of being forgotten about as well in that regard.
So frustrating. Like, and even when I see news, like I think it was there was a model who has Down syndrome is now a model for Victoria's Secret, and it was a news headline, "Isn't this great?" And I literally was like, I'm happy for her, but it shouldn't be, "Isn't this great?" a headline like that. It shouldn't be a headline.
Right.
It should just be there's a new model.
Yeah, normalized. Because like that's the thing. It's like you know, if you normalize anything, it's like, oh, of course, you know, of course that's the case because that's a normal thing for to happen. Very strange because I never thought that we would we would actually talk about this, but it's again, you know, this is another reason as well why I had Dr. Enoch O'Leary on the last episode of the podcast, was to talk about issues that maybe people wouldn't even, you know, it's a topic that they wouldn't even broach themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In their own internal thought patterns, if they see somebody in a wheelchair, if they see somebody with a disability or whatever, there's that thing of you know, maybe it's like, oh, I don't want to, you know, look at somebody or whatever the case may be. I don't want to be rude or anything like that. You know what I'm saying?
I think it comes as well from like when the whole Black Lives Matters movement really blew up and everyone was like, I think every white person was like, oh my God, I didn't realize. And that's okay. You didn't realize, but now it's your responsibility to learn and educate yourself. I think that's, if anyone's listening, like people come up to me and they tell me I'm an inspiration, and it really annoys me because I'm like, what are you doing about that? What am I inspiring you to do? Am I just inspiring you because it makes you feel good seeing me on the screen? No, I don't want the pity inspiration. I want you to do something about it. I want you to educate yourself. I want you, like, I think that's why I can get sometimes really overwhelmed by the whole thing, because I am one person, and at the end of the day, my job is to swim, and my job at the moment is dance and swim. And I am trying to be an advocate and educate, but I don't know everything myself, and there aren't as many areas in the day that I would need to be that one person for people to go to get the information. People need to be proactive themselves and go out and ask questions, Google. If you're not comfortable going up to somebody, like people with disabilities, if you come up to them and ask, like, what could I do in my business that would help you and your body and your community and make it more inclusive? I think someone with a disability would respect that business owner so much for asking that question. But if you're not comfortable doing that, Google it.
Yeah, I think it is a comfort thing, really, isn't it?
Like, it is.
You know, it really is. Like if I was a business owner and I had somebody that was in a wheelchair who come in, I'd be kind of like helicoptering, you know, like just kind of going, right, okay, how can I make this situation better? You know what I mean? Or whatever, can I, you know, make something that's easier to reach or whatever? But like, I don't, you know, I just think that it is still that unbroachable thing with people just yet. And I think that like my solution to most kind of like societal issues is education, right? But it has to start from like when you're fucking tiny. As you said, kids are great. Like they're like sponges. They want to learn. They're curious about things. And if they feel like they can ask something of somebody, they will.
Yeah.
So it has to start that early, because I know there was, you know, brief periods of time, maybe in SPHE or whatever the case may be, where we might have covered it for like 1 or 2 classes or something like that, or whatever, you know, there might have been something like that about people that have, you know, that are like in different colors, different races, different abilities, these kind of things. But I do think that it's again, like if we're going to be educated on race, or we're going to be educated on sexuality, and it's absolutely phenomenal that Ireland is actually like a leading, you know, country in terms of like freedom for people that are homosexual, and freedom for people that are all different races and colors and creeds.
Yeah.
Why can't we do it as well for people with disabilities? You know what I mean? It's, and it is possible. It
is possible. We are a tiny country, so we can change things.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunately the history of buildings and what things look like is still
such an old country. It's kind of like we can make these issues, and I like the way that you approach it. Of like, I'm not hating on the person who owns the building, because you can't really, you know, like as you said,
but it's also expensive. Like
it is expensive,
and I think there's a government grant in place at the moment and the only thing it covers, I think, is a ramp.
Right. That's it.
That's it. Not
that's-
like accessible toilets.
But, all right, okay. I can tell you one thing. It was a fucking able-bodied person
that
that
made
came up with that policy.
ramp.
Do you know what I mean? What do people with wheelchairs need? They need ramps instead of steps, and that's it. And
But
you're
even like when the pandemic hit as well, and there were so many important speeches on the news, it took them a few weeks to get an interpreter in. Like that interpreter wasn't there at the beginning.
yeah, it's mad.
Like what?
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. Like
Mhm.
it's because that's the if we want to actually, create more visibility as well, as you said, like there has to be more. If I saw more things, if I
it
saw
would
more
normalize.
fixtures,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Side point for anybody that's listening to the podcast, my first choice on my CAO for college was occupational therapy. Would you fucking believe? Which is like, physical therapy, but also fitting fixtures in people's houses and stuff like that to make them to make it easier for them to get through their day-to-day lives. I just thought it was amazing. I ended up not getting it because I wasn't smart enough.
God damn it.
Gosh darn it.
All these great brains.
Yeah, God
not
damn
being
it.
used.
And I think well, look, to be honest with you, I'm not going to keep you any longer, Ellen. I think that was a fantastic conversation. Really gave me an insight into because I just thought it was amazing when I was reading about you in the days running up to this as well, just to get more information, that you had your first games at 13 and you're 26 now. You're 13 years into it. It's like, for anybody that is kind of like, feels like they're kind of getting burnt out, I think that happens an awful lot for young athletes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's people that are like, just because you have so much energy as a young person, you just go all in, and then you end up burning out, fizzling out in your late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
Like, before we go, for anybody that's in that situation now with anything in their lives, right? With anything in any stage of life, and they feel like they're burning out or something, or they're losing interest or whatever, do you have any advice for people that
I
feel like
think
that?
the one thing that has kept me in the sport this long is because I knew deep down I wanted to win a gold medal. I knew deep down that I was capable of doing something great. And I have done things where I've not wanted to be there, or I just wasn't enjoying things anymore. But it was always like deep down, I knew the purpose and the reason behind it. So I think if you're struggling at the moment, ask yourself the question deep down. Like, we all know deep down what we want to do. And if you honestly can't look yourself in the mirror and say, this is what I want to do, then find out what it is you want to do. Don't be afraid to let go and move on.
Yeah.
All those hours that you've spent doing something will stand to you. All those skills, they're still skills you've learned. You can transfer them. They're transferable skills.
100%. I think that that's not a narrative you hear. Like, we were just talking about social media and the distractions of social media. That's not the narrative on social media. It's never quit on your dreams, never quit on anything. But honestly, right, if I can say anything to anybody as well, like, echoing Ellen's words here, like, don't ever be afraid to become a beginner at something. If you're an expert in something,
Oh my God, yeah.
and you're testament to that now with
Even
Dancing
with
with the
dancing,
Stars,
oh my God, yeah.
Because that's a huge thing there, where you're like, right, you're an expert in swimming.
Yeah.
Right, so you're and actually Dan actually discussed this. Dan from Dan, the owner of this beautiful Primal Podcast Studios, was talking about this, about the expert's journey, right, and like how an expert becomes an expert by kind of continually thinking they're a beginner. But it's so great as well to start something new, isn't it?
So exciting.
And
you learn things about yourselves you didn't realize you didn't know, or you knew. And there could literally be a talent that you have that you haven't realized.
Yeah. It's really exciting. And
it
as well,
is really exciting.
This is another point that I wanted to make about your swimming, was when you do compete in Paris, and let's say it is your last games, you'd never know, you might think there's another one in me before we go. But isn't it exciting to think about as well that, yeah, okay, I'm going to close the door on competitive swimming. You're probably going to still swim and you're probably going to still be involved with swimming. But isn't it exciting to think about what other doors are there unopened?
So exciting. I think that's why I'm so at peace with it, because I'm like, I'm so excited to move on.
Yeah, because that's a confident person's response.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, including me, I didn't want to leave Thai boxing for a long time because I just felt like there was nothing else that I'm going to be good at.
Yeah.
You know, and I felt like I'm after finding something I'm good at now. Let's cling on to it, even though it's not giving me any joy anymore. And I'm fairly sure there's a lot of people listening to the podcast here now that are thinking, right, I'm doing something and I'm not enjoying it anymore, and I'm still clinging on. Right. If you can just take that leap, that step towards something new that you've always wanted to try or wanted to give a go at, don't be afraid to be a beginner again, because it's so exciting. Because everything's new.
Yeah.
You know?
But also, if you are seriously that unhappy in a situation, but you don't know if it's the sport or not, go somewhere else. Go have a change. Like, I think one of the hardest things that I will struggle with now, and I have struggled with probably since I was 20, 21, 22, is a lot of my peers are a lot younger than me now. So I don't have people my age training with. So I have to figure out a way of getting through the next 2 years, not on my own, but like with people who I won't be able to relate to a lot. So I'm going to have to find that in another aspect of my life. And it literally just change club. It could be a change of a club. It could be a change of getting a new hobby to help take that pressure off. Or just finding
start Scrabble or something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Anything.
And like life is too short to not find joy in something in every day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We don't have to suffer.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great one to end on, is that, you know, you can actually do whatever you want, you know, and it's scary as well, because you're the one who's kind of like controlling whether you fail or succeed or anything. But it is amazing to think that, you know, just because I've chosen this path doesn't mean that I've closed off all other paths.
Yeah.
You know, we can.
Choice.
You know, yeah, exactly. And you're testament to that, because it's one of the reasons why I got you on the podcast, is that you literally just threw your hat in every ring, which I thought was just really, really cool. It was like, I'm into swimming. I'm going to be actually a presenter on radio and television. I'm going to be Dancing with the Stars. I'm going to be so many strings to your bow. And Ellen, I wish you the very best of luck with everything into the future. And hopefully we might even get you on again for another episode.
A little update.
Yeah.
Don't forget to vote for me on Dancing with the Stars.
Yes. We'll finish with this one final plug for Ellen. Don't forget to vote for Ellen, to keep her in and to get her to win Dancing with the Stars. To add another medal to your box. Yeah, it must be ginormous case in your house. But yeah, thank you so much, Ellen, for coming on today. Cheers.